The next little while, we're going to be connecting with, we remember this Carl Jung's pyramid, and we had like 5% is conscious, and then we had the personal unconscious, and then we had this collective unconscious, which I think is, infinitely large. Well, this is what we're going to be playing with for the next while. They say, we give lip service in many of our classes, or we say in health promotion and human performance programs, we say we're all about the mind, body, spirit connection. And yet when people say, well, what's the spirit part, and where do you learn about that, and what's going on there, they kind of give you a blank stare. I don't know. It's the spirit, whatever you think it is. And that's not true. We do know what it is, and we do know how to play with it, and we do know how to make that a conscious, aware part of us. We're not conscious of it necessarily, but we can be aware that there is a way to hook into that part in very real, palpable ways. Well, this first part is quite simple, what we're going to play with today and Monday. It's really interesting, and I kind of call it spiritual time management. In the stress management class, we played with a really, really simple time management program, that ABC 1, 2, 3 program, where you list all of your A's and B's and C's, and then you prioritize your A's and prioritize your B's. You remember that, right? And some people that appealed to amazingly. Other people, that just wasn't them. And it was very logical. Well, I'm going to introduce you to an idea, and the name that this time management method has is not new to any of us, but the way the process of this might be entirely new to you, and it's really cool. But I want to start out with a question for you, and I want to ask everyone, raise your hand on this, if just to kind of see where we are. Some people, I'm going to categorize all of us into one of two categories. I want you to select one of two, and if you're more one than the other, then that's fine. That's the one you would select, and it doesn't matter, but how many of you are, in terms of life and goal setting and going after things and being about your day-to-day objectives and goals getting, how many of you are more like, okay, I'm going to explain two ways. First, there is the example of the rocket ship. And the rocket ship, essentially, it sets the goal and it blasts off to the goal, and nothing gets in its way. It goes like, here's Earth, here's the moon, and it might go off track just a little bit. It immediately hooks back in, and it goes off track, and it immediately hooks in, and you get the goal. Bam, there's the moon. Okay? Some people are like that. Other people are more like the hot air balloon. The hot air balloon kind of floats up, and then wherever the wind sends it, it happily goes. It likes the idea of not being so concerned about, the end goal, but it is the spontaneous flowing with the moment that is more valuable. Okay? Does that make sense? So we have two different ways of being. How many of you, and there's no right or wrong, good or bad, neither of those is superior. It doesn't make any difference. How many of you would say you are more like the rocket ship, where you're a goal-getter, and things that get in your way are annoyances to the goal, right? So raise your hand, the hot air balloons. It's usually about, if you can't decide, then you're a hot air balloon. Just kidding.
I switched so much.
Then you're probably a hot air balloon. The hot air balloon is spontaneous. You know, if something comes up, bam, I'm gonna try. That's what I'm sure that goal will happen somehow. Okay. Now, what I want to introduce to you is an idea that allows you to have both in a very amazing way. I can't express enough how much of a difference this has made for me anyway, when I apply this principle that we're going to learn about in the next 2 days. How, because I tend to be more of the rocket ship myself, but when I introduce this principle into my day-to-day life, life becomes so great, and I'm still reaching goals, but what I found out is, through this, is there's better goals. And there's better ways that I wasn't aware of. Let's see. There's a word, some of you have heard this term before, most all of us have heard this word. It's called serendipity. And you've probably heard the term from, there was a movie a while ago called Serendipity. I never watched it because I didn't want it to mess up my understanding of the word. And somebody said it was a chick flick, so I didn't want to go.
Yeah.
Another reason not to. But I'm going to reference 2 books. There are several others, but there's 2 books that I highly recommend for your reading. The first one is by Marcus Bach, called The World of Serendipity, and I'm going to give you some quotes out of this. And then we're going to work a lot out of this one by Richard Eyre. He's a Utah boy, called Serendipity of the Spirit. The World of Serendipity. Marcus Bach was actually a uncle or something of Richard Bach, who wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull and all those other great books that are on the book list. And apparently they're also related to Johann Sebastian Bach, somehow descendantly. But anyway, great book. We'll use some quotes out of that. But Richard Eyre's book, Serendipity of the Spirit. If this appeals to you at all, this would be one of the better books that you've ever had. It is in one of my top 10 books I've ever read. So let me kind of lay some groundwork here. First of all, some definitions, and I don't want you to write these down, but I want you to kind of tune into these definitions that when I was looking to try to see how I could explain this to us, I first went, okay, well, what do we know about serendipity that is how it's defined? And so here are some that that I came upon. Well, first, Marcus Bach in his book, he talks about how this word came to be. Any of you heard of this before? Have any of you heard about this idea of serendipity besides the movie? When I say serendipity, what comes to mind?
Happy accidents.
Happy accidents. Yes. Yeah. What did you say?
Yeah, just chance.
Chance, meaning?
That things just happen.
Okay. So with those 2 things in mind, think about this, these definitions, and just kind of sense them.
I was just going to say on the definition, I've always thought it's planned chance.
Planned chance. Okay, that makes sense. Possibly, let's see how those 3 ideas correlate with these. The way this started, or the way the word kind of came to be, there was a writer, an English writer named Hugh Walpole, very, very great writer, and he used this term. He said, the quality which through good fortune and sagacity, which in other words wisdom, sagacity, sage, wisdom, allows a person to discover something good while seeking something else. He developed this word and definition after reading a Persian fable called The Three Princes of Serendip. That was the Persian fable. He said the story tells of three princes who went into the world to seek their fortune. None of them achieved what they were seeking, but they each got something else, something better. One found love, one found beauty, and the other found peace. And the quote from Bach's book, he said, "These three men, while traveling through the world, rarely found the treasures they were looking for, but continually ran into other treasures equally great or even greater, which they were not seeking. In looking for one thing, they found something else, and it dawned on them that this was one of life's sly and wonderful tricks. When they realized this, they got an entirely new slant on life, and every day resulted in a new and exciting experience." So, some definitions. In Webster, we read, making discoveries by accident and sagacity, in other words, wisdom, of things not in quest of. And I'll diagram this so it'll make sense. The faculty of making happy and unexpected discoveries by accident. The gift of finding valuable or agreeable things not sought for. And in Bach's book, an unexpected discovery of something worthwhile during a search of an expected something worthwhile. Did you catch that? Some of this kind of disappeared right then. An unexpected discovery of something worthwhile during a search of an expected something worthwhile. So it kind of looks like this. So we're the rocket ship for a moment. And here's us now on this timeline. And we have set a goal, something worthy of us, something that we feel like is valuable. All of us rocket ships, we set goals for ourselves. And we find ourselves doing what we need to do to get to the goal. Great. Every time management and life management person will say, goals are good, you need to set them. Okay? Now the idea here behind serendipity is on your way to the goal, something happens which prior to this understanding would be considered, we would call it an accident or even an annoyance. Something that's getting in the way, a roadblock to the goal, right? The idea behind serendipity is this is not an accident, and you end up, by following these principles we're going to learn, you end up with, so this is something good, and you end up with a new something better. And you couldn't have planned for this. It wasn't in your plans, nor was it in your consciousness to go in this direction. But part of you down here knew that that was a better plan. Now, with that in mind, I need to kind of throw out something that I don't want you to take in the wrong way. I'm not trying to be religious here. But we've spoken a little bit about God or an omnipotent omnipresence or a universal consciousness or an infinite intelligence. We've kind of played with that, and we'll play with it a little more in the future. But we have an assumption. There is an automatic assumption in this, and if you're like atheist, then okay, that's fine. That might not. You might have to figure out how that fits in this. And I'm not trying to say there is every philosophical or even science now, when they talk to scientists and they say, do you believe in God? And they used to say, well, of course not, I'm a scientist. And now when they talk to scientists, they say, do you believe in God? And they say, of course we do. We're scientists. The idea is that even science, hard science now has an idea that there is a fundamental underlying something that is running the show. Okay? Now, we've talked about this briefly, that this infinite intelligence has three basic characteristics. This intelligence, this God, this collective, part of this collective unconscious is omnipotent, meaning all-powerful. There's nothing it cannot do. Okay? Omnipresent means there's nowhere where it isn't. There's an interesting quote that I've heard. I don't remember where I heard it. Course in Miracles, maybe, where it said the only belief that man has to correct is his belief that he is separate from God. This everywhere includes inside of us, okay? Just as much as outside of us. The third belief is that we have about this infinite power is that it is omniscient, meaning knows everything. Now, I added another one to this, that this infinite intelligence is beneficent, meaning, what's beneficent mean?
Concerned for our good.
What did you say?
Doing good.
Yeah, it's all about our well-being. Ben in Spanish, bien means good. Beneficent means wants our best for us. Okay? Now, think about this. If you have a belief that this is your reality, that you have as part of you an omnipotent, omniscient, beneficent power, everything changes. Why would you ever, we live our lives so disconnected from that, but we can no more be this power, and we're going to play with this more, but this power, it's like we are a little drop in the ocean of this ocean. We're one of the drops. We think we're not in the ocean, and that's the problem. We think we're separate from it. But we can no more be separate from it than the drop of water can be separate from the ocean. That's the idea. Now, with serendipity, what happens here is we make our plans. You know, you sit down and make your plans, you make your goals, and you're thinking, okay, here's what do I need to do? Where do I need to go? And let me think. And you consciously set things in motion, right? Okay, I'm going to do this goal and this goal. We said that our conscious is less than 5%, and some say 1% part of the game. And yet we rely so much on that. Oh, I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, and exactly where I'm supposed to be going, and exactly how I'm supposed to be doing it. And if you think about how egotistical it is, and I like that term, this ego of us. Here's our ego, which I like. Wayne Dyer, he says, This is an acronym for easing God out. That's our ego. In other words, we're doing it on our own. And we make plans, we think, oh, I know best. And we say, okay, I want to be a doctor. Why do you want to be a doctor? Well, because when I was 18, somebody said I should be a doctor, and so that's what I'm doing. Or I want to be a whatever. Or I want to... And so we get these things in our mind thinking we know what's best for us. Our limited ego that is its own little island awareness on its own thinking it's so smart. I love reading stories about people who have died. We used to play with this in this class. Stories about people who have died and then they get resuscitated. We've all heard of this near-death experience. Has anyone never heard what I'm talking about? When somebody dies, say they have a heart attack, or they get in a car accident or something, and then while they're dead, so-called clinically, in other words, heart rate stops, brainwave activity stops, breathing stops, they're clinically dead, their awareness continues. And then they resuscitate them, they do this, and whatever they do to get them back to alive again. And when they return, and I have read over 1,000 of these stories of people who tell about what happened to them, their awareness while they were clinically dead. They call them near-death experiences. If you want an interesting discovery, spend some time on the near-death experiences websites. It will transform you. And the reason why I say that is one of the things that they always say, and these are people who have died and gone to the next stage of life. I don't know how many stages there are, and I don't know, but there seems to be a next stage for people who have died and come back to tell about it. There is it doesn't just end. There is a next thing. But the thing that they frequently tell is, we don't know squat about anything. We think we know stuff, but we don't know very much at all about anything. I remember reading one instance, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but where this person had passed on, came back to tell about it, and his comment was, when he was in the next stage, he would have a question about anything, and the instant he would have the question, his mind would be flooded with the answers. It would just flood into his mind. All these different things he had no idea about previously. And the things that we think are most important are really the things that are the least. That's one of the common things that they say is the things we think like, fame and wealth and glory and all these things that, being important. He said, they always say these are the least important things. These are the things that matter the least. And yet we give them all the energy. So anyway, the point I wanted to make with that is there is a part of us that does know what that something better is. There's a part of us that knows that there is a better goal. And the way that it gets us in the direction of these goals is by these happy accidents. That's what you call them, right? A happy accident, an occurrence that you weren't expecting, or some event that you were thinking, man, that shouldn't have happened. And the reality is, that's exactly what was supposed to happen. So that you find yourself in a better outcome than you could have consciously, ego-directed, planned for. Does that make sense so far? What questions do you have or thoughts?
So, but this is not the same thing as predestination.
Mm-mm.
It's your...
I don't know that predestination is a working principle.
Right. That's why I was kind of curious where, I mean, so this is basically the subconscious knows in the future, so to speak, of what the possible outcomes are, which of those possible outcomes would be better. Basically handling the law of probability of consciousness.
Say that last sentence.
The law of probability. It's handling the probable outcomes.
Yes.
And the best possible outcome better than what your conscious is handling.
Or better than you could have known how to handle them.
How I understood it when you were explaining it is not necessarily our unconscious knows the future, but it knows what we are and what we want. And so it will help us get to what is better than what we think is good for us.
Mm-hmm. And it also knows what's best, not only what we want, but what is ultimately, because a lot of the things that we want may not be best for us. But it knows what is best for us, and this is why we have problems in our lives, and we'll explore this on Monday, but we have problems in our lives, and for the life of us, we can't figure out, why am I having these problems? And when we understand this principle, we start to go, oh yeah, there's a reason for it all. There's a purpose behind it all. Even the most horrible situations, there's a reason behind it. And we couldn't have planned for, no one plans for the bad things. Oh, I'm going to go get dysentery tomorrow. Let's work on that one. Or I'm going to get this STD or something. I don't know why that came to my mind. But, nobody has that as their goal. And then they get it and they go, why in the heck did this happen? Well, there might have been a reason. I think of people who have gone through alcoholism or just gone through drugs, and everyone's so, oh man, what an awful person you are. They're not awful. They just had an event. They had an experience that they went through. And if they have this in mind, the good that can come of that can be enormous for how they can help others or whatever. But they wouldn't plan to be the alcoholic.
But so, like with the idea that we know that there's a part of us that knows that there's something better, is it because maybe we were told and then forgot? Is that kind of what you're trying to say?
Say that again. We were told, then we forgot.
Maybe there was some other life, maybe we were told and then we forgot, and then that's how we start to know.
I'm not following you exactly.
Okay,
No, say it in different words. Give like an example. Put it into.
Say we had another life.
What do you mean another life?
Another world.
Like a previous to now life.
World.
Oh, okay.
Previous to now life.
Okay.
And we were told of the something better. But then when we came to this world, we forgot, and that's kind of what that being on that kind of line is, and having that accident.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know about. I have no awareness of a previous something, but I have a sense that we are infinite beings, that there's not a beginning or an end. And this life, it's like some people have written about it, this life is like a parenthesis in our real existence. And, we're just here working things out. But that perspective makes it so that when things happen to us, in the perspective, maybe this is in answer to your question, with that bigger perspective, before, after, and I don't know that those guys who come have the near-death experience say time is not the same once you're out of this space-time continuum of Earth. It's not the same. That it's almost like there's just only now, which doesn't make any sense to me. But that's what they say when they return from those near-death experiences. And it is an infinite now, and we're just working through this. And everything that goes on here there's a connection to our more infinite nature. And so those things that happen to us that we have forgotten, and these accidents are kind of helping us. Maybe that's what you're saying, is it gets us back on the, okay, this is why you're really here, come on. Nudge you this way instead of how you think, ego, is the right way to be carrying on. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Probably.
Could it also be like with school, like if we change our major? So
Yeah.
you, like in high school, you always wanted to be a specific thing when you went to college and wanted to graduate in that, but then say you don't get in the program full time, so you change your major type deal?
Yeah, I mean, it goes from all the way to the very biggest life things to the, wow, I was driving home and I just had this, there was an accident on the road, and so I drove a different way, and my whole day changed and everything about it was different because I went a different way. That's how you were supposed to go from a wider perspective, or at least this knew something better. It wasn't an accident. Even on the littlest kinds of things, and everything unfolded differently. And you couldn't have planned for that. That's the whole point of this that I love. There's no way in the world growing up that I ever thought I would have been, one, in a college setting, maybe playing baseball, but definitely not teaching. But things just kept happening and kept happening that I wasn't controlling. I just said, I don't know where I'm supposed to go. And next thing I know, here I am. A dumb jock who's really not supposed to be with all these elite, really brilliant people teaching stuff. You know, it's totally not my plan. And yet, what has come of it, and I'm not saying, because like I've said before, I'm the most normal person I know. But it is way better than it would have been at the bank or whatever. That's the big example, and it happens, and I'll bet every one of you, this has happened a lot. Where you go, oh man, I didn't expect that, but wow, that's better. Well, the idea is you can direct that. You can, no, that's not the right way of saying it. You can make that engine go so that this right here is happening in an aware sort of way. Because most of the time you think, well, why did that happen? I don't know. Man, that was weird, but I like this better. Well, what we're going to do is explore how to make this a regular occurrence for us. And there is a mindset that we have to have. But before we go there, does this all make sense so far? What questions? Do you have any questions about it?
I have one.
Yeah.
I'm in the firm belief that you can presence in law of attraction. You put out what you get back. And a lot of the times you keep going with things that are sure better. If you keep putting out positive, and the things that keep coming out supposedly better are negative, is it just one of those patience things that, okay, you'll learn later on in your life? Kind of like if an athlete breaks their leg, or they're right at their prime or something like that, and they break something important.
Yeah.
And it's just tragic at that point, and they've done everything up to that point to do it, right? They just find out later in their life? Is it like a patience deal, or is this something we're going to address later?
See, the idea, one of the most powerful ideas that I have come to accept is that there's no such thing as tragedies. There's no such thing as bad outcomes. The appearance of them, we're sucked into the illusion of the appearance of bad. Oh, that's so bad. I remember one summer I or one spring I was playing basketball and I felt like somebody had taken a Louisville Slugger and just bam, right into my Achilles busted. I was playing basketball, went up for a rebound, and it just felt like somebody hit my leg with a bat. Tragedy, the worst thing that could possibly happen, right? What worse? And they said, one doctor said, well, you'll never walk again. You'll never walk normally again, because I couldn't lift my foot like that. I couldn't lift it from there to there. And for an athlete, that's the worst thing under the sun. You know, get rid of my arm, get rid of my... I still need to run. And one doctor said, you'll never run again. Tragedy. And so I went through, it was a long story made really short. I ended up that summer learning about a new kind of yoga that I could do that made my rehab super fast, or my healing came super fast. But I wrote the textbook that summer. That was kind of cool, because I didn't have anything else to do. I sat and wrote for the whole summer. Now, it would have been, the idea that it would have been a tragedy is based on my ego's limited awareness of the bigger picture. I love the comment that Richard Bach says in his book Illusions, which is a terrific book if you ever want to read a really fast read, but it's just so packed with good stuff. He said this, and I'll try and get it right. He said, the mark of your ignorance is clear. Let's see, I'm going to paraphrase it a little. The mark of your ignorance is most clearly recognized by your belief in tragedy and injustice. What the caterpillar calls death, the master calls a butterfly. The mark of your ignorance is your belief in tragedy and injustice. That's how it goes. What the caterpillar calls death, the master calls a butterfly. And that's the whole idea. You know, when we say, oh, this terrible incident or this, well, no. You wouldn't have planned for the ruptured Achilles. Nobody would. But look what happened as a result. Kind of idea. Does that make sense? So this really is a bigger picture viewing of life's events and going, oh, you know, when you look back, oh yeah, I can see how it was a great thing that I didn't meet that person until this time in my life. It wouldn't have worked for me to know that person earlier. We all have those kinds of things. Well, on Monday, we're going to get into the how do you make this engine happen so that it is a working principle on a day-to-day basis, so that you're still going for your goals, you're still going after the things that you have decided are important to you, because we still do that. And in the meantime, or in the process of them, you become aware of the bigger force that's at work in your life that knows, okay, that's a good job, nice going, and I'm going to show you what's even better that you couldn't have possibly planned for. Okay? So we'll start with that, and we'll get into this handout I was going to give you on Monday. So have a great weekend, everybody. Hand pass to your middle.